this Audre Lorde quote, and I like don't remember the exact one off the top of my head, but she was talking about the uses of anger for Black women and how a lot of times she saw like white academics or white feminists like telling her like, you know, what are you gonna do about this racism thing? And she's like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, I'm already mad about it. Like, that's kind of like your thing to to try to work on. And she said that guilt that those like people were feeling when they were talking to her, like, was really just a response to them, like their own inaction, or they felt like they weren't doing enough, so they felt guilty. But really, she was saying guilt's like one of the most useless things to feel unless it spurs you to action, and then it's not really guilt, it's like the start of knowledge. And I could like try to find it if anyone does want it, because it's a really interesting piece. But I always think about like the role of guilt and like who gets to feel it, and similar to what you were saying, Lauren. So I appreciate that.
Come on, we talked about this over the summer too. I know there's a number of you on here.
Yeah, this is basically a meeting. I think going back to what you were saying about how you go like to your kids, I think like for me as well, like that's like going to my parents, because they're kind of in like that spot where they're like, well, it doesn't affect me, and they do have that outlook on it. So how you go to your kids telling them about the action that they need to make, I go to my parents about the action they need to do now, because it's not just about how it's not about them, like it's affecting everyone. So I go to my parents a lot for that as well, to trying to tell them the action they need to do rather than just watching the news thinking that they're going to get something out of that.
Because I thought I was very general. I don't want to be general. Some of the actions I tell my kids and my family to take is protest. You know, I don't know if my players know this, but my boys, they were listening in on our conversations over the summer, like educating my my family, my boys on what other people are going through, and so it becomes more real for them. You know what I mean? And so they understand what they need to do. So I didn't mean to be general there, but those are some of the things that some of the actions that we're trying to, I want my now, unfortunately, my boys aren't here right now, but I want them in on these talks. I want them to hear how important these talks are for moving forward.
Yeah, just to touch on what you've been saying about kind of focusing on that younger generation, like we ourselves are able to hold ourselves accountable, I think, for the actions that we're taking, and we're aware of like what kind of things we can participate in. But definitely what I've noticed with my mom, she works as an ESL teacher. And so she kind of single-handedly integrated a whole anti-racist curriculum, even though her school was kind of against it because they're like, oh, you might make the parents a little nervous. But she did it anyway. And the kind of stuff that she focuses on is just having those conversations tailored for children, and focusing on like children's books that she can share that are written about different issues in like relative to anti-racist action. So I think that has kind of inspired me to create like different like creative means of addressing this as much as possible and continuing the conversation. So I think something I notice in my own experience in quarantine is just the power of like imagination and letting just things come to fruition. And fortunately, I think here at Colgate, we have a lot of support when it comes to that. And I don't know, that's definitely been like a driving force for me in terms of continuing this conversation as much as possible.
Fun fact, we owe the Zoomathon to Elisa's
yes.
imagination. She birthed it.